Good morning. This is 1 in 36, a presentation from Anderson Center for Autism, celebrating their centennial in 2024. 1 in 36 is a weekly show devoted to autism spectrum disorder.
Good morning and welcome to 1 in 36, the weekly talk show on topics related to autism spectrum disorder. I'm your host, Eliza Bozensky, Chief Development Officer at Anderson Center for Autism. And today I'm talking with Matt Sloan from Sensory Fitness. Matt is the owner of which I believe is based out of Washington, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Washington State we're talking about. All right.
State,
Matt, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Eliza. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. I love using this podcast as a platform to, just highlight the work that's going on throughout the country and the world, really, to support in all sorts of ways our autistic and neurodiverse community. So I'm excited to hear what Sensory Fitness is all about. And I'm going to throw it to you then to tell us some of your background, what led you to open Sensory Fitness and what it's all about.
Yeah, it's a long story, but I'll give you the short of it. Yeah, so originally, a long time ago, I was a special education teacher for about 13 years. Oh. Mostly with kids, social emotional behavior disorders, a comorbidity of a lot of things. So kids that, were in school and they got kicked out of the class for behavior. They were sent to special programs, usually kicked out of those programs. I worked a lot of residential alternative schools, stuff like that, all over the country. Ended up here in Washington doing the same thing and kind of got a little burned out with the IEPs and all that. Spent less time in the classroom, but I used a lot of movement in my classroom. I found a lot of success with that. Mm-hmm. Kind of got me, I kind of went down and then I got interested in occupational therapy and decided to quit my career in my 40s and start a new career. I don't always recommend it, but it worked out.
It works for some, doesn't work for all, but it's worth the risk when it does work out. So
it was all the dice for sure. So I went to became an occupational therapy assistant, and I kind of fell into sensory integration therapy it was one of my placements, and I was like, what is this magic? What is this? I'm putting a kid on a swing. Like, why am I doing? And I just saw the connection between, again, movement-based strategies to help kids. And I was like, ooh, this is cool. Plus, I'm also a fitness trainer. I used to be an adaptive PE teacher as well. So all the movement stuff I really enjoy and I'm into and I understand. So I kind of put the two together eventually. And that's what Sensory Fitness became is kind of a combination of sensory integration therapy and fitness. So I am based out of Washington, and I'm in Tacoma, Washington. And I rent out a space in a wrestling gym, which is awesome because it's all mats. And I put up suspension. I got some bolts so I can hang up some swings, and I got all my stuff here. That's what. So, what was the question? That was.
Well, you answered the question. I think it was your background and kind of what led you to do what you do now.
Oh yeah, okay.
It's intriguing to me that you started off as a teacher. I was also a teacher before I had a career that led me to what I'm doing now, which is sort of a windy career. But I taught for a long time, and there were days for sure where it was like clear as a bell that nothing was going to happen if you kept those. I taught third and fourth graders. If those kids were going to be sitting in a room, even a room with bean bags and lots of complete places to sit and not, tied to a desk the whole day, it was just like, you had to get them out on the field. We had to do something creative. And all of a sudden my class would be out there, listening to me teach something while playing on the playground. And it's sort of a sense you get when you just know this isn't working. You got to get moving. It does something to people.
Yeah. And it actually helps like the movement they get. We used to do this thing called, we called it focus in the morning. So the kids would come in and I gave them a choice. They can go play basketball. They can go take a walk outside around the school, do yoga, or come do boxing with me. They didn't hit me. They had pads and they would hit me. So the kids that would come after that, it was like 20 minutes or so, I forget the time, but the kids would come back to class ready for supposed to be ready for school. And the kids that did well were kids that generally did the yoga or the boxing. The kids that went and did the basketball or even the walk, they had a harder time reeling it in. And what's the difference? Well, boxing is really heavy. I'm kind of focused on one spot. It's a lot of heavy work. It's rhythmic. Yoga also very heavy based, a lot of body weight, calming, lights are off. Basketball, I'm in the gym. It's echoey. There's a ball flying around. There's no real body connection. Same thing with even the kids that took a walk. They weren't moving at a fast pace. There wasn't as much visually distraction, maybe outside, but they're not really connected. Or then it's kind of loose. Not a lot of body input. So the kids that got all that input did a little better and ready for the day rather than the kids that.
Yeah. So that that makes sense in terms of how you reacted and responded just now when you were describing your background to learning about sensory integration. And we know a lot about that at Anderson because we have an OT gym. We have OTs, PTs, all of our related services staff, and you can, we have vestibular swings and, ball pits and weighted kind of everything. And so you can really, once you start working in that domain, you can see just based on the response and reaction of the student, or the adult in whatever case it is, of what kind of sensory stimulation their body is seeking or needs massive amounts of or far less of. Because their bodies just respond, right? You can literally see it.
Yeah. And that's a big piece of it is seeing a kid through the sensory lens. So you're looking at their behavior, how they're behaving, and like, okay, well, what kind of input are they getting? And then that also changes your approach to that kid, right? You might not use a cognitive approach. The kid is behaving because you understand perhaps they're sensory seeking, perhaps they're sensory avoiding, perhaps they're overload, perhaps they're understimulated, right? So and these kinds of lenses, like we're looking at why a kid might be doing what they're doing. And then my approach is not like, hey, cut that out, stop doing this, do A, B, and C before you get in D, right? That kind of approach. It's more like, all right, let's get this kid up, let's put him in a swing, or let's get some heavy work, or let's go, let's do some breath work, a different approach. And that's a big piece of what I push is like, number one is understanding the sensory role, the sensory piece that plays into kids on the neurodiverse spectrum, and all of us really, because we all have nervous systems, we all get frazzled, we all have stress, trauma, restricted movement. These all lend themselves to difficulties processing and responding to sensory input.
Yeah, I think I'm glad you said that. This is not singular to the neurodiverse population. Actually, every human, probably every mammal, I would think, at least maybe every living thing, has some sort of sensory perception. Some people are more, maybe more sensitive to it than others, or have less of an ability to sort of self-soothe and manage, what comes at you at any given moment. But it's really important, I think, to note that what you're offering at your gym is probably beneficial to just about anybody, because typically we all learn what makes us feel good when we go do it, what brings us back, grounds us, what makes us feel focused. I want to get into, Matt, we're going to take a break in a couple of minutes, but in the next few minutes, can you just give us a sense of what you do, what happens in your gym? And then in the other half of the show, we'll talk about how you're broadening the number of coaches, how you're offering certifications and all of that. But in the gym, when people come to take classes either with you or get training sessions with you, what are some of the things that you go out of your way to do?
So if it's a one-on-one, a private kid comes in, I'm going to observe. And I'll run them through some general motor skill assessments. I'll even assess for maybe some retained primitive reflexes. I'll see how I'll put them on a swing. I'll hang up some Lycra and see how kids, what they gravitate to, what they respond to. All the while I'm talking to the parent, if possible, and getting as much information as I can about the kid. So, there's observation, there's some data collecting, and I'm seeing how they respond to directions and how they move, that kind of stuff. We'll do some coordination activities. I'll look at stability. I'll look at motor planning. So all the while playing, right? Especially if it's a kid, it's all very play-based. It's all very kid-led, very, very similar to an OT session, especially in a sensory integration therapy session. It's very child-led. I'll see, just constantly following that kid, and I'll put some things out, and what they go to, then we'll try to build from there. So that's initially what it looks like. And then, once we have some goals to go for, then we'll build on that. We'll work on the type of sensory input that kid might be seeking or avoiding, just to help with regulation. We'll do if it's swinging for 20 minutes, then it's swinging for 20 minutes. If the kid is sitting on their bottom, then maybe eventually I'll try to get them on their stomach to work on some extension, to work on some stability. And then maybe I'll have them hold a rope and pull, and then work on some midline stuff, from coordination, or catch a ball or throw a ball. So all I'm trying to build through play and through these activities. If it's an older kid, this is kind of where I guess I differ in some ways than a clinic is, if an older kid, getting into 10, 11, 12 adolescents, some therapy clinics are, they're pediatric. They're very kid-ish, right? And
yep.
13-year-old. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's just the way. It's not always age appropriate, or some kids think it's too kiddie. And when I was a clinician, when I was a therapist, we lost some kids as they go because they don't want to come to the clinic because it's too kiddish. So then we do more fitness-based stuff. I try to do the kind of very similar stuff, but fitness-based. We could still use swing. Still fun. They're still cool. Maybe we add some push-ups in there off the swing. I use a lot of weird equipment, things that promote movement that, as opposed to put a dumbbell in a kid's hand, they might pick it up, but I put a club in a kid's hand, they're going to swing it. They're definitely
going to pick it up. I want to make sure your website. Tell us what your website is, because I want to make sure people know.
My website is sensoryfitness.org. Okay,
sensoryfitness.org. Folks, check this website out, because Matt, I was on it earlier today and I saw some really cool things. I just want to kind of throw out there, exemplify what you're talking about. You had a short video of, I think it was 4 or 5, looked like maybe adolescents who were stomach down in kind of, I guess they were swings, but they were almost like hammocks. They were cloth, so you could sort of lie in them. And they had hockey sticks in their hands, playing hockey while sort of having to move their bodies around by way of their core, right? By moving within the swing. I thought that was really cool. It's hockey. It's cool. It's fun. It's different. It's not baby.
Yeah, there's an example of
those
older kids. Yeah,
exactly. I thought that was great. I also saw a video of some folks who honestly reminded me of some of the students that we serve at Anderson, who looked like they really were not, maybe they were on a little bit more of the profound end of the spectrum. They were not making eye contact with each other. And yet you had them kind of in a line, which might have been more comfortable for them. They weren't looking at each other, but they were doing a group activity where it looked like the goal was one person at one end of the line picks up an object and passes it down to the person next to them until the other person basically gets the fun of smashing that object on the floor, which is also something that a lot of adolescents like to do, but in a healthy way. So I love that. I love the breadth that I saw.
Cool, thank you. A lot of that stuff, I have a loose plan, and then sometimes you just kind of make it up on the fly, or sometimes the kids make it up, but the principles stay the same. I'm always looking for what kind of input they're getting, and then what kind of motor output can we work on. It's usually revolving around stability and coordination, and then you just fill in the blank. So I come in, I don't really know what's going to happen sometimes. I have equipment, and then I see how a kid's moving, like, this is not working, we're scrapping this right away. And then they come up with a cool game, like, we're doing that. Let's do that.
Yeah. So I love that. I think that's a great approach for initial engagement too, because those kids either decide then and there that they're coming back, or they don't want to come back. So that engagement. We're going to take a real quick break. When we come back, we're going to get into your coach certification, the different programs where you can find coaches, and more from Sensory Fitness. This is 1 in 36, a weekly talk show on topics related to autism spectrum disorder. I'm your host, Eliza Bozensky, and we'll be right back.
Sometimes I just cannot believe all the storms we've gone through here.
I can only hope that we'll be able to leave this house to you one day, baby. You're our legacy.
Planning for these disasters will make sure we're safe, and is the best way to protect that legacy. You know what? We should make an emergency communication plan. That way we're ready this year. At my dorm, we have emergency kits for earthquakes and wildfires, but I'm sure there's something more local I can send you with a link.
Okay.
Smart.
Protect your legacy. Visit ready.gov/plan for the tools and tips you need to start your emergency preparedness plan today. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Somewhere, there's a river rushing through the woods while someone rushes through their day. There's a mountain looking up at the sky while someone looks down at their phone. A trail waiting to be walked while someone waits for a latte. This world is full of somewheres waiting for someone just like you. So go see yours at 154 national forests and 20 grasslands. And to learn more, visit nationalforest.org. The National Forest Foundation. See your somewhere.
And now, 1 in 36 continues on 100.7 WHUD. This is a weekly community affairs program presented by the Anderson Center for Autism.
Welcome back to 1 in 36, the weekly talk show on topics related to autism spectrum disorder. I'm your host, Eliza Bozensky, and today I'm talking with Matt Sloan, who's the owner of Sensory Fitness out of Tacoma, Washington. And Matt, I mean, I really have enjoyed listening to your background, kind of what brought you to doing what you're doing, which is running the sensory fitness gym in Washington. There's another whole aspect of what you do, though, besides working directly with either groups of students or clients and or individual training sessions. You also offer, I think, an array of certification programs, and the testimonials on your website are, they're a testament, to really, I guess, the impact of what you're doing, both in the gym, but also for so many different professionals and providers of all sorts of different, in all sorts of different roles and all over the world, it seems, who are receiving these trainings. So tell us, I know you want to talk about the sensory fitness coach certification. So tell us about that one.
Yeah. So that's the one certification I offer. And it's certification if you are it's geared towards fitness professionals, but I have it's a mixed bag who kind of takes the course. A lot of OTs, a lot of parents, PE teachers, coaches, anybody working kind of in any kind of physical capacity with kids. So it's called a sensory fitness coach certification. The course is called a sensory approach to adaptive fitness. And what I'm looking for is to train as many people as possible to use these strategies. And so you can use it in so many different settings, because I can only treat so many people, but if more people kind of use this approach, we're doing more.
Yeah.
And it's different than other adaptive fitness courses in the fact that we're kind of using the sensory approach. That's the big main difference between that and a couple other things. But so that's my main thing I'm pushing at the moment. It's the sensory fitness coach certification. I also offer other trainings. They're not certs, they're just trainings. I also offer one for PE teachers specifically, because that's a struggle, having a classroom full of kids on the autism spectrum or on the neurodiverse scale somewhere can be difficult, managing that and what activity to use, some of the things we've already talked about. So there's training for one for them. There's a training for teachers using sensory strategies in the classroom. Again, these all come from my heart because I was in their shoes, so I understand how difficult things can be sometimes. And then I also offer one for parents, things to do at home, and then adult ADHD. I myself struggle with ADHD, so again, it's kind of speaking from my heart, going down that road, what it's like to have ADHD and be an adult diagnosed in the 80s where, you got help in school. Once school is over, you're like, see you later. I'm like, oh no.
Well, yeah. And those all sound great. And I have a couple of comments I want to make, but one definitely is that unfortunately hasn't changed dramatically. That still to this day, there's a lot of services now that are offered through the school system. And then all of a sudden you have a young adult who you could argue between the ages of what, I don't know. I have a 13-year-old son. So I'll say between the ages of 12 or 11 and 12 and probably somewhere in the 20s. I mean, there's so much energy. There's so much of a need for physical movement. But, half that time is spent outside of the school system. So when you don't have structures and supports or professionals who are great at what they do, but don't realize that they can also adapt what they do to meet the needs of somebody who's neurodiverse, you have a problem. So I'm glad that you're offering that, especially with your level of personal and professional experience. That always makes a difference. I do want to comment on the fact that you have parents who take your certification course and also a specific training for parents. I hear this all the time. Families, I think, often struggle with the need to obviously prioritize keeping your loved ones safe at home, especially when there might be other children in the house with all sorts of different needs, different ages, and you're trying to, sort of take care of everything. And the primary thing becomes keeping your children obviously safe and healthy, versus struggling with finding ways to keep them active also, which in the long run keeps them much healthier and usually happier, sort of more balanced, but it often feels like another thing to do. And we hear a lot during the admissions process at Anderson that, look, my child could definitely be healthier. He used to love to run. He kind of stopped doing that, or he used to love to swim, and we just got busy, can't do it anymore. And so he's gained weight, or he's become very lethargic, and we've seen an increase in behaviors. It's a very often told story, and we totally understand why. So I'm really happy to hear that you dedicate some of your time to specifically helping families understand some simpler things, or less time-consuming things that you can do at home that might be able to fit into a family kind of dynamic and schedule.
Yeah, I mean, being a therapist and also being a parent of one son who struggles with his own sensory difficulties, I know what it's like to preach, and then I come home and that all goes out the window. I'm like yelling at my kid because he's not listening to me. I'm like, I'm not using any of my strategies at all because it's hard. I'm done. I'm tired. I had a long day.
Yeah, no, that's a very real struggle. I get it.
So I try to find like easy, practical things that maybe you can do, either being proactive about it or kind of more passive. Even just setting up the environment a little different can be enough. Can help take the edge off. It's nothing parents have to do as much, as opposed to like maybe just turn the TV off or little things like that.
That may lead to what you see, right? Is when they walk into the gym and you watch to see where do they go first. Do they go to the swing first? Do they go to start kicking balls around? Do they, are they picking up a bat and looking to swing it at something? What's going to grab their attention? It's interesting.
And that's kind of the big piece, understanding, like looking at your kid a little bit differently. I feel like that's a huge part of it. Everybody wants specifics. What can I do? Give me an exact activity I can do with my kid. Go. I'll give you 1,000 of them. But if you don't understand why your kid's doing what they're doing, it makes it a little bit more difficult. If I kind of know the why, then I can fill in and use the.
We always look at the reason. It's all communication. You can learn a lot when you sort of figure out ways to slow down and really look at why somebody is gravitating towards something, or even more information sometimes why is that person avoiding that thing over and over again?
Yeah.
Everything else about that person tells me that they should love that activity. Why do they never go near it? And that can also be very informative, right?
Yeah.
I was going to just make sure that we cover things like I looked at when I was on your website, which again is sensoryfitness.org. It looks like a lot of your trainings are like maybe online, hybrid. You can either do online or come in live. Is that true?
Yeah, so the Sensory Fitness Coach is an online course you can take. So you have to go. I also come to you. I'm going down to California next month, El Centro. I also host them here if you're in Tacoma or in Seattle, in that area. I do them here at my gym. I like the Sensory Fitness Coach is one I'm really passionate about because it's like another space. It's if you look at a clinic, it's not much different than a gym. There's a lot you can do in a gym or a fitness setting that you can kind of recreate from a clinic. So why not let's utilize these spaces, and what can we do? You add a swing in your gym somewhere. Can we use some scooters? Again, understanding the why, and then you can adapt your space.
Yeah, I get it. In the halls of Anderson School, we will. You can come in for a tour, and you might see some students on scooters, and not just in the gym. They'll be using them in the gym, but they'll also be in an OT session. Using those scooters to get from point A to point B in the hallway. Yeah. It really does make a difference when you can generalize certain skills and keep it recreational and fun, but also obviously skill building, but not just have it only happen in one place. I also noticed that you got some folks who got trained by you all the way out in Australia. So I don't know if they came to you or if you went to them or if they did it online, but I think it's just really worth repeating that this is a training that you can access online and make use of Matt's expertise and knowledge and experience. And everything I've ever seen that has an impact, where the impact gets really big are the ones where you're encouraging people to take a class or to learn how to do something that they then can confidently, put out there and practice in their own area. And that's kind of how this is going to spread. So I think it's really, it's really wonderful that you're sharing this, not just with your local community, but you're finding ways to kind of extend it out there.
I've got people from Singapore, Pakistan, India.
Awesome.
Lots. So that's pretty cool. So I'm trying to spread the word, just kind of using these fancy strategies and a lot of there's other strategies as well, but just meeting the needs of this growing population, Yeah.
I think you just nailed it. I think, it is a growing population. We have 1 in 36 children in the United States are diagnosed on the autism spectrum every year now. It's a huge number. And so there's also a huge need for more people like you, more gyms that, you've set up that are accessible, and where somebody who otherwise might not feel comfortable bringing their child to a gym for some physical activity is going to walk into yours and feel welcomed and feel that it's okay. And and you're going to understand, and you're going to work. You see it as your job to work to figure out what's going to help that person, as opposed to they have to fit into my model. Thankfully, I'm seeing more and more of that. But I love hearing about your story and encourage, again, all of our listeners to check out sensoryfitness.org. Matt Sloan, thank you so much for being on the show, and thank you for all what you're doing. I think it's a great program and a great coaching and training opportunity.
I appreciate that. And thank you very much for having me. I love what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. Spread the word. Keep doing
Thanks a lot, Matt. This is 1 in 36, the weekly talk show on topics related to autism spectrum disorder. I'm your host, Eliza Bozensky, and remember, Anderson cares.
You've been listening to 1 in 36, a weekly presentation from Anderson Center for Autism, celebrating their centennial in 2024. Join them for another edition of the show next weekend.